From the John DeVita Broadcast Center, welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to another broadcast of Armchair Experts with Jim Leon and Rich Massaro on the Windy City Hometown Entertainment Network and Jack-O-Lantern FM 89.7 WRHS FM Norwich on Wednesday, October the 29th, the year 2014. And now, here they are, Jim and Rich.
Rich, another hour broadcast magic. My golly.
How can you beat that introduction?
I don't know.
John, thanks, buddy.
Thank you, John. John DeVita, obviously just taking care of us once again, looking at us going, what are these two clowns doing down here?
I have to say, though, John, a true professional through and through.
Always.
I mean, he just he knows how to do it, and he's been in the game for a long time.
Yeah, we're just little blips here.
We are. As compared to John, we have
we're just little blips in the history with no experience, just two guys with big mouths.
That's it. And well, that we have.
That we have. So, gee, I wish I could remember all the good stuff we talked about last night over at Mariano's.
You know, Jim, we talked about Sparty. We talked about the Bull. No, we didn't get the Bulls. We talked about the Hawks. We talked about the Bears. We talked about the Cubs.
We talked.
We talked about. I think we talked about Tom Brady and Jay Cutler, and I think Johnny Unitas and the Bart Starr got thrown in there.
And we talked about Willie Mays
and Mickey
Mantle. That if you were picking a team in your baseball team, and your first two choices were Willie Mays and Mickey Mantle.
Well, actually, what it is that, say, you and I are picking teams, and our Willie Mays and Mickey Mantle are two of the players. They're the two best players.
Yeah.
And the point I always make is, say, Jim says Mickey Mantle, I get Willie Mays. I'm not going to be too unhappy.
Yeah.
Or if I say I'm going to pick Willie Mays and he gets Mickey Mantle, he's not going to be unhappy.
I'm not going to complain either, but. You know, you look at, we talked about great quarterbacks from the past. You know, you said your favorite quarterback as a kid growing up was watching Johnny Unitas.
Right, and my other comment was that I really, if I had to pick a second favorite, that would be the guy that we had the Bears just face on Sunday, Tom Brady. And my whole thing is, that's just, in my opinion, those guys are what I look for in a quarterback. And what Jim said is that, he liked Bart Starr. And you know what? I would never sit there and argue that
merits.
My guys are better than his guys.
No.
It's a matter of what you like, and that's all it is, because they're all great players.
And you progress farther, a little farther along up through the years. I always thought the poise that Joe Montana had.
Mm-hmm. Oh, no. I mean, there's a lot of other guys we could throw into the conversation.
Nothing wrong with that. But, I mean, you get into the point of looking at Cutler, who's always seems to have had that gunslinger, at least what we've seen here is this gunslinger mentality, that no matter what, I'll power my way through it.
Well, you know what, though, Jim? The other thing, I think one of the things we talked about last night is, and what I mentioned, Dana was with you when I ran into you at Mariano's, is that, when you give up 51 points, and I understand. I didn't see the game. I understand that Cutler, maybe we had a couple other turnovers in the first half, but when you give up 51 to be, if the quarterback gets criticism, I just don't see that. And to be honest with you, the Bears have actually. Do you remember a game where this year? I know that they've been consistently putting up about 23, 24 points. I don't know what their average is, but in the tradition of the Chicago Bears, a pretty good defensive club normally, 24 points in other seasons would probably get you quite a few wins.
Yeah. I was just trying to flip over and find the, find the standings. I think the criticism has been, let's see, the Bears this year in 8 games have scored 180 points.
So that's 20-some points a game.
Yeah,
23. That's about 22, 23 points a game.
But the criticism is last year you were what? The number 2 as far as scoring, you were what, 28, 29 points a game.
You know what though, Jim? That this is all garbage. I got to tell you, when you start to talk these numbers, nothing is the same.
We have to find a babip.
You know, what I love is that the sports writers, their expectations were that this was going to be a much better offense. I have to say this: we added no significant weapons that I could think of to the offense. So is it going to be just a natural progression? 28, 29 points a game, to me, I don't know about in this current NFL, that's a lot of points.
Yeah.
If you drop down 6 points a game to 20, from 29 to 23, I'm still thinking that with the decent overall team effort from the defense, special teams, everybody, that should be enough to win you quite a few games.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm not going to buy this that the offense is super disappointing. Yeah, they're scoring a little bit less, but what does that mean? To me, it doesn't mean a whole lot. What do you think?
I guess the problem has been that the additional money that you spent to bring in some defensive help has not worked.
Yeah, but you know what?
You know what I mean. You have other than the kid they drafted in the first round. The defense hasn't been anything spectacular, and I mean, it was indicative. You saw the problem Sunday when Lamar Houston decides to celebrate a sack, when his first sack of the year, when he's 25 points down, jumps up in the air, acts like an idiot, and blows his knee out, and is done for the year.
Yeah, well, here's the problem, though. The way I see it, I think that Emery has worked as fast as he can to try to shore up. Let's put it this way. I'm not going to say the cupboard was totally bare when the previous administration and coach left.
Well,
there were a lot of issues that needed to be addressed.
You had 10 years of not really good drafts.
Yeah, I wouldn't say bad drafts, but I'm saying, what would frost me, Jim, is that every year we'd be getting defensive tackles and safeties. And you know what? When Lovey and Angelo left, we still have more new defensive tackles and no answer. I mean, put it this way, a different answer at safety. So I'm like, what the heck? These guys kept on drafting for those positions, kept on loading those positions up. And now the new administration comes in and finds that whatever they found there wasn't adequate, and they have to reload on that again, as well as shoring up offensive line that definitely needed it. Strengthening the wide receiver position, the tight end position. They had a lot of linebacker. The linebackers were getting old. I mean, when you think about this, Jim, quarterback, and you know what? If anybody listens to this, I'm not asking you to take this to the bank. Quarterback position was solidified at least. You had Cutler. You knew that was the guy that was going to be there. Running back was fine. We had Forte. Offensive line, they needed work. Wide receiver, they needed work. So you named 4 possible positions.
Now you've got a key person out on that offensive line because Slauson's done for the year.
Yeah, he's done. And there's the other problem, Jim. Let me go back to my original thought, though. So let's say there's 4 different areas on offense. Let's say quarterback, running back, or 5. Quarterback, running back, wide receiver, tight end, and offensive line. They had to improve 3 or at least improve 3 out of 5. Add players 3 out of 5 of those spots. And the defensive backfield, say you got linebackers and secondary, they had to improve all 3 of those spots. They needed a new punter. Hester was getting old. They had to address the return game. So there was a lot of things that needed to be addressed, and I think they did the best they could. And if some of it's not working out, so be it. But I think they wanted to give the fans and everybody else an immediate, as quick a fix as possible. Just hasn't happened yet. That's the way I see it. I mean, too many people want to throw a lot of garbage their way. I think it would be unjustified.
And I guess the question that I'd have to ask now, too, is Trestman over his head?
You know what? I told you yesterday when we met that I had heard Trustman. I think it was on WXRT. It was funny too. I don't know if I mentioned this to you. Kyle Long does a spot on XRT the morning after the games, and Lynn Bramer is saying yesterday, "Oh, we got a call from the Bears, and they say it's the bye week, so Kyle Long's not going to appear." And I'm saying to myself, "Wow, isn't that pretty convenient?" After a terrible
game.
So, but the Bears claim that, and Bramer's like he's the host of the show. He's not knowing anything about this. But what prompted me to say that, Jim? What was your comment?
Is Trustman over his head?
They had a clip of Trustman talking, and he sounded a little shaky. And in the paper, he also said that they're going to use the bye week and they're going to have to start from square one. And I think part of our conversation last night, and without going into detail, is how the offense and the defense basically sort of have to be on the same page, because if your defense isn't performing and you have an offense that's throwing the ball around and either scoring as quick as possible or turning the ball over, because when you put the ball in the air a lot, you're going to turn it over sometimes. Why are you putting your defense in that position if they are not effective at this point? Then you need to sort of try to keep them off the field as much as possible. So I think maybe Trustman, I'm hoping that that's dawning on him, and maybe some things will change. I don't think it takes that much to change gears. I mean, you have a running game in place. You have maybe a short passing game in place. Maybe that's going to take the place of what's going on right now.
Mm-hmm.
The other thing, you alluded to Slauson being out for the season. I think when you talk about the offense scoring less points on average, my impression is, and I've said this either on the air or to you personally, Martellus Bennett has caught a lot more passes, and maybe part of that is because Jeffrey and Marshall have struggled with injuries during the year, and they may be playing a little bit more hurt than they want to let on, and they maybe be a little bit less effective.
I mean, you had Marshall's contention was there was a 4-week period that he shouldn't have even played.
I would believe that.
And I would believe it the way he was.
Yeah.
Now, I mean, on Sunday, he only caught 3 passes, and like you, I didn't see the game on Sunday.
Mm-hmm.
I was doing something else. We'd gone to see an afternoon with Jerry Lewis out in Aurora, which was an interesting day, but that was something else.
Yeah.
That was something else. So I put myself on a Bears sabbatical because I was just getting tired of listening to this and watching some of this.
Mm-hmm.
But Marshall, I think only got 3 passes. They pretty much covered him. He only had 3 receptions Sunday.
Well, I know that Revis was on him, and they made a big deal out of Revis shutting him down. I'd say this though: does a healthy Darrelle Revis, maybe shutting down a little bit nicked up Brandon Marshall, is that a big surprise?
You have a good defensive backfield, and you have a defensive backfield. Just remember, a few weeks ago, everybody was wondering, is this the end of the New England Patriots?
Well, that's your typical modern day sports fan. That's your typical NFL type of buzz, if you want to put it that way. Yeah, I mean the NFL, or I shouldn't say the NFL, but the on-air announcers and whatnot can be just as meatball as some of the people who come in with meatball comments on radio shows and whatnot. Because it was all that was prompted by the fact that Kansas City laid 40-some points on them and beat them up pretty good.
Beat them up, and I think Brady had to be pulled, which I think probably made sense if it was a game that was way out of hand. I mean, he got pulled on Sunday.
Yeah.
Yeah,
he got pulled on Sunday. By the way, Jimmy Garoppolo played, and it's interesting when you see a team like the Patriots, who maybe has a little bit of they have the convenience of maybe having a little time to break a guy in, but they take a local guy. I think Jimmy Garoppolo's from Rolling Meadows and went to Eastern, and they see him as it sounds to me when I hear Belichick comment that they feel he's going to be a good quarterback and have quite a few years in the league.
No.
And you're talking about a guy who's not a high round pick. And sometimes, really.
Hey, there was another kid from Eastern Illinois who's done pretty well in the NFL.
Tony Romo.
Yeah.
And
he wasn't even drafted.
Right, he's a non-drafted player. So, it's just this whole thing. I have to get back to. We talked a little bit at one point, Jim, about where you end up and how that affects your whole career. And a guy like Garoppolo may be just in a really good spot, and you might have some other quarterback who's a more high-profile guy who ends up. Obviously, they're going to end up with a lesser team. And you get thrown to the wolves.
Well, I mean, you know what? Talk about somebody ending up in the right spot. Tom Brady was a sixth-round pick?
Sixth, yeah.
Sixth-round pick from Michigan.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody ever thought much of him. I mean, he was nothing really out there. And who did he succeed?
Drew Bledsoe.
Drew Bledsoe.
He also succeeded another Drew at Michigan, Drew Henson.
Yeah.
Actually, Tom Brady is a guy who showed maturity and patience, I think, beyond what you would think, because I think he actually waited for, not sure he waited till his junior or senior year before Henson left. He didn't unseat Henson, but he left to go to the draft. And Brady waited that out. He played. Then he waited his turn in the NFL. He made the most of that. My understanding of Tom Brady, though, is that they said when he went to Michigan, because he's a California guy,
right?
Went to Michigan, and they said, "Well, Drew Henson's ahead of you," and he's such a competitive guy. He was like, "Bring it on." Got drafted by the Patriots as a sixth-round guy, and Drew Bledsoe is ahead of you and probably going to be there a long time, because I think Parcells, who had preceded Belichick, thought a lot of Bledsoe, and they it looked like they were going to keep him for a long time. They dumped a lot of money on him, and Brady said, "Hey, I'm ready to compete." So his whole thing was, I'm going to compete. No, I don't care what the guy's status is or who he is. And
Bledsoe got injured, and that was the end of Bledsoe at New England. He never got his job back.
It's similar to what happened with Smith and Kaepernick in San Francisco.
Right.
Of course, Kaepernick hasn't produced the results that Brady has yet, but he's still got time to do that. There's another thing though, Jim. If you went over the list of NFL quarterbacks, how many of them were really big stars in college? You probably would look and say, maybe Aaron Rodgers was to a degree, but he was in California. That's not a big football powerhouse.
Peyton Manning
was at Tennessee.
Brought them to some national prominence.
Yeah, but if you go down the list of other guys, where was Drew Brees? I don't know where he's
Drew
from.
Brees was at Purdue.
But that was at a time, though, where Joe Tiller was putting out a lot of good quarterbacks. And by the way, one of our old quarterbacks, Kyle Orton, seems to have given the Bills offense a shot of adrenaline, because he played really well Sunday.
Yeah,
I believe, I don't remember who they played, but I think they had an upset victory over. Can't remember who they played. And I think the previous week he had a nice game, and I think that was the first week he had stepped in for E.J. Manuel. So,
and I was hoping that the Meatballs wouldn't start. Well, they beat New England, or not New England. Buffalo beat the Jets on Sunday.
Oh, they beat the Jets. Okay.
43-23, but of course that was the game. Geno Smith had 3 interceptions in the first quarter.
Mm-hmm. But if you look at Orton's stats, he had 2 or 3 touchdown passes and. Had a nice game going for him.
Yeah,
I would say this though.
Bears meatball fans will be complaining.
They will, but I don't. They probably are the same meatballs who were glad to see Orton go when he originally left, because weren't they looking for Caleb Haney to take over? Because
I don't know. Yeah.
So that's the one good thing about being a meatball or being a sports writer or anybody in the media. You can have a conveniently short memory.
Sunday, Orton was 10 of 17 for 238 yards, no touchdowns.
Okay.
No, excuse me, 2 touchdowns.
Yeah, I knew he had a couple touchdowns.
2
in there.
touchdowns, 3 touchdowns, 4 touchdowns. I didn't think they had it all on the ground. That's interception. Sorry, my mistake. And then it's going, as far as the Jets, that's going to ensure Michael Vick's going to start, and it's probably going to ensure that Rex Ryan will be out of there after the end of the year.
You know what? Rex Ryan has been on a really long leash there, and they're 1-7
They're
right
1-7 right now,
and I don't think he's even going to survive this. And I think he's, in baseball, the manager's got to handle the pitching. To me, he's bollocksed up that quarterback situation because I think he's the straw that stirs the drink there. I mean, obviously he's still there, and the previous GM is fired.
Right.
That usually is the reverse. The GM usually has the clout, and the coach is fired.
And the coach gets whacked.
But I don't think he's going to survive this. And I have to say, I think that he's been the guy who's been behind the quarterback moves. They got rid of Sanchez, who actually I thought was decent quarterback, better than what he's got now. And I just think if he's the guy who's making the decisions on quarterback, they're poor because Geno Smith obviously is not the answer. And I going to tell you, Michael Vick will jazz things up a little bit, but he's not going to be the answer either.
No, because Michael Vick's going to run, and Michael Vick's going to get hurt.
Well, I don't
you
say he's going to
count on that.
He's going to make some mistakes too.
Yeah.
He's just not going to. He'll win a little bit for you, but he's not going to win to the extent that you want to win.
Yeah,
so.
yeah.
Now I have to say, I know you have a ban on the media. You've boycotted sports talk radio. But when we were talking last night, because I'm thinking about meatballs, I'm wondering, is Corey Crawford been kicked out of town yet? And Scott Darling inserted as the new Hawks goaltender?
Gosh, I wonder. And hey, and it was nice too. He's a local kid. He's from Lockport,
Lamont,
rather. Yeah.
It's interesting. They had a little bit of an article about him in the paper yesterday, and I've been just cruising through the paper because so much of it is useless. But I didn't have any much background on him.
You want useless? Listen to Mully and Hanley.
I believe that.
Listen to Grobstein.
But
there's useless.
You realize this? Here's a guy who's one of the things I love about hockey. I think this happens in hockey more than anything. This guy is 25 years old. They said 4 or 5 years ago he was playing for the Mississippi Seahawks, and I think it's the Southern Hockey Association. Well, it's a minor hockey association, one that you don't really necessarily link up with future NHL prospects being in. And he's been in quite a few other cities since. Finally, he worked his way up to. Is Rockford and Chicago? That's the AHL, right?
You're right.
International Hockey League is done.
That's been gone for years.
So he worked his way up through different leagues to the AHL, and now I'm assuming he's going to go back to the Rockford Ice Hogs. But he himself said, "Hey, listen, who would have ever dreamed where I started out?" He says, "I'm just thrilled that I got to put on the uniform and actually play in an NHL game." And on top of that, he wins his first game and only gives up 1 goal. So, I think that's a really good attitude, Jim, because obviously there's nothing written in stone, especially in sports. You don't know. Maybe that one game is going to be the only time you ever are actually in that, due to God knows what reasons.
Yeah.
But, it's good that you could appreciate it while it's happening, and it's great that it happened to a local guy. And so that
and you know what I mean. You go back and think the first Stanley Cup run. Nobody ever thought
that's true.
Antti Niemi was going to wind up being the number one.
Yeah, because he took over toward the end of the year when who was our guy back then? The guy who went to Switzerland.
Yeah,
can't think of his name.
Yeah.
But the other guy had goaltended us through most of the run in the season, and then I think he got hurt, and Niemi stepped in.
He got hurt, and Niemi stepped in.
And I'll tell you, there's another thing, Jim. You got to take your hat off. Say in this case, it was Joel Quenneville. you have to take your hat off to a guy that is willing to play the hot hand. Too many. Who the heck was it that was just commenting about this? I don't know if I was reading the Maury Wills book or I just read a book by Merrill Hodge, but somebody was saying they don't understand. They understand, I guess, in their head, why a coach would say, okay, this player is injured, but he's not going to lose his job due to injury. If I could see that philosophy taking hold, if the guy you put in place of the injured player was just a placeholder and, okay, was playing okay, but not better than the guy that he replaced. But what I don't understand is that when that same situation happens and the guy who comes in to take the injured player's place is hot, why automatically, when that other injured player is ready to come back, that he's automatically in the starting lineup? You're going to take the hot hand out and put the guy who's been on the shelf for a month back in?
Yeah.
When coaches do that, I don't understand.
I don't understand it either. Just think Corey Crawford. I mean, Crawford was, after Niemi left, Crawford was supposed to be the backup, and that's when they brought Marty Turco in.
Right.
And Turco didn't work out. Crawford got his shot.
Yep.
He stuck with, and Quenneville, well, he's now my number one. I'm sticking with the hot hand.
Yeah, you got to go with and believe me, I'm saying this because I've done the same types of things. You have somebody maybe with a reputation, or that was just a great example you gave. Marty Turco, excellent goaltender, veteran guy, looked like he'd be just the right guy for the situation we had. And I think that was his last year in the NHL, or maybe he played one more year on the bench with somebody. But he was pretty much done. We found that out fairly quick. And Quenneville, to his credit, said, okay, we're pulling the plug on this idea. We got to go. Hey, we got to go with what works.
Marty Turco amused himself on the bench for the rest of the year by, making fun of Pierre Maguire while he was doing his stand-up there, as he was bombing the shot, making fun of Pierre Maguire. Yeah. Also down at the other end of the bench, and a play was right there, and the guy was kind of leaning against the bench. And Turco opened the door, and the guy fell in.
Jim, I got to ask you this:
Turco at least had a lot of fun his last year.
Well, hey, you can't eliminate fun. Yeah. Fun is all part of the whole thing. I have to ask you this: was Pierre Maguire a coach or something?
I have no idea.
What is his standing in hockey that he's gotten the gig that he's got?
I have no idea.
He might be somebody's brother-in-law.
Somebody's brother-in-law. There's pictures he has of somebody.
That could be it.
Yeah, I have no idea, but I just don't understand why he's.
Oh, Jim, let me ask you this though: what's your whole take now? Because you know what, in my mind, when I came here today, I'm thinking, you know what? We had such a nice flowing conversation. We bounced from subject to subject. We didn't get too. This is last night.
Right.
We didn't get too wrapped up in one subject. So let me hit you with this, and this is something we talked a little bit about last night. What do you think of this whole Joe Madden deal, with Joe Madden resigning or opting out of his contract with Tampa Bay, and possibly being a candidate for the Cubs manager spot?
My first thought when I heard that was Don Mattingly was gone.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
that was
that's logical.
That was my first reaction. Don Mattingly is gone. The Friedman, Andrew Friedman, just went out to L.A. from Tampa Bay.
Mm-hmm.
And he has become the Theo Epstein of L.A., the president of baseball operations.
Right.
And I thought, okay, Joe's headed there.
Mm-hmm.
Then everybody said, well, the Cubs job.
Yeah,
he'd be a great fit here. And all of a sudden, it's very quiet here.
I know both the Mets and the Dodgers, who were rumored to have interest in Madden, both made definitive statements that they were sticking with their managers. I know it's Mattingly in L.A. Who's in New York? I'm not even sure.
I was just about to ask you who's managing the Mets. There.
But you know what? It might be is it Terry Collins? Maybe.
Yeah,
possibly.
It might be.
Whoever he is, but John's laughing in there. He's whoever he is. I was going to say,
John, we don't know everything.
Jim, I'm going to sidetrack a little bit here again. It's interesting, and the reason I'm interested is because Ned Coletti is a Chicago guy.
Ned Coletti is out as the GM.
He's out as the GM. When Friedman came in, he's out. Okay, because I was going to say,
I think Coletti was reaching the point where he was going to retire.
Okay, yeah, because there's another guy who did some aggressive work with the Dodgers, because when he got there, they weren't in that good a shape, and now they're making the playoffs every year. Maybe Friedman is the guy who's expected to take them that extra step. We have to break, John.
I'm just watching our fearless leader in the other room. Let's take a break.
We've been
right
yapping
back.
this long already.
We've been yapping a half an hour already.
Man.
Yeah.
You're listening to Armchair Experts from the John DeVita Broadcast Center on Jack-O-Lantern FM 89.7 WRHS FM Norwich and the Windy City Hometown Entertainment Network on Wednesday, October the 29th with Jim Leon and Rich Massaro. And this is Jack-O-Lantern FM 89.7 WRHS FM Norwich, Illinois. And now, back to Jim Leon and Rich Massaro.
Pretty soon it's going to be Jack Frost FM.
I'll tell you one thing, Jim. Thank God for Windy City Hometown. I love it. John, thank you very much for having that, boy.
Yeah.
I'll tell you, you are something. You know what? You are a legend. In my mind, anyway.
Well, thank you, Rich. I appreciate that, pal.
So, after Halloween, the studio gets decorated for Jack Frost FM?
That's right.
Ah!
All right.
Oh, yes.
The Christmas decorations come out.
Jim,
Right after Halloween, we'll start decorating inside, outside, and all around.
All right,
man.
John.
All right.
Because I tell you what, John's got some great Halloween decorations
Yeah.
here and outside as well.
Yeah.
He does it upright, this guy.
He does.
You never underestimate John.
No.
Never underestimate John.
What did you say so a couple of years back? Where there's a will, there's a DeVita.
Yes, indeed. You got that right.
No matter what. Now, where were we?
I was going to say that this all falls into place. I wouldn't really call it falling into place because it's going to be messy regardless, because you got Renteria on a first year of a 3-year contract. So if you're going to bring Madden in, they're talking about Renteria. Now, I don't know if this is the Cubs talking or the papers talking, but they're talking about him being the maybe being reassigned within the organization, the old reassigned within the organization deal.
Yeah.
And
I remember when they used to send general managers out to Arizona to be in some special assignment out there. I kind of figured Larry Hines and Ed.
I know who you mean.
Yeah. Ed Lynch were living together in some.
I thought
some bunkhouse out there.
I thought Larry and Ed and Ron Schuler were all sipping cocktails out by the swimming pool.
Maybe they would be doing that.
One of their homes
in
their
reassignment out there as a special consultant.
I have to say this though, considering this is Chicago and this is the Cubs, as good a manager as I think Joe Madden is, Dusty Baker, Don Baylor, Lou Piniella all came in with pretty good credentials. They were pretty well-respected managers, and all of them had some success here, but not as much success as you would have hoped. And with Joe Madden, we get the same thing with Joe Madden. The curse of the Billy Goat. Can the man with the Mr. Peepers glasses overcome the curse of the Billy Goat, Jim? Nobody can overcome the curse of the Billy Goat.
The curse of the goat is.
Who was that? Gus Cianis or which Cianis?
That was Billy. That was Billy.
Billy Cianis.
The original Billy Goat.
Yeah, that's right. So and what the heck? What's a couple Billy Goats in the park? You ever see some of the drunks in that park? The billy goat couldn't be any worse than the drunks. I mean, come on.
You know, everybody's all in a tiz about the.
Thanks, John.
They're tearing down the bleachers
you,
and rebuilding this and doing that. And now we've got the whole thing with that. John's going, yeah.
I agree with John.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I think the reality is, we were talking about this Sunday over coffee with the Marianos guys. And I think they're right. Somebody was saying, well, the Ricketts don't have the money, which I would agree with. But I have to say this. I think the Ricketts looks like to me they're in it to win. And the only way they figure they can win is to drop some money on the ballpark where they can modernize it, get more people to be interested in the Cubs, come to the games, or whatever other way they have to sell the team. And because you're not going to, I think $500 million was the price I heard for all this renovation. You're not
most of the money is coming from them.
Yes, you're not going to dump $500 million and then dump the team. So they're in it, at least at this point in their minds anyway. They're in it for the long haul. Financial situation could dictate otherwise somewhere down the road, but at this point their mindset is long haul. So, and I think as much as I agree with John, I hate to see Wrigley Field become just another big shopping center with a green field, the green and grass and dirt field in the middle. I think the reality of today is that's what they really have to do, maybe, to compete.
Well, I mean, you not only brought up the point about the them doing the things to the park to modernize it to sell it to the fans. Mm-hmm. You also have to sell your facility to the players to come here.
Which I just get a kick out of that.
I think you do. I mean, the player, you're going to look at what kind of atmosphere, what kind of tools, what kind of things do I have available to go to work? Just like anybody would look at a job. What sort of atmosphere is this?
It's a good point. I mean, you're not going to go.
It sounds silly, but it
you don't want to go
reality.
to work at the realty agency and they don't have a computer. They don't have anything where you can get your multiple listings. They don't even have pens and paper.
You don't want to be an accountant where you're still doing.
That's like if John went to the firehouse and said, "Okay, we're ready to go," but we got the truck and everything, but no hoses.
There you go.
I have a question to ask you.
We have an answer for you, and if we don't know it, we'll make it up.
Okay. Okay. I understand that they tore the bleachers down at Wrigley Field. Is that right?
Right.
Does that mean that the wall where all the ivy is all gone?
No. It's the outer.
Oh, okay. Because that's what really made Wrigley Field. I think it was the wall with all the ivy on it. I mean, that's what they always.
Jim, you have John. You have a great point because really the way would have been that wasn't Bill Wrigley. Well, here's the way
it was Phil.
It was, but Bill when William Wrigley owned it. When William Wrigley owned it and Bill Veeck Sr. worked for him, I believe it was Bill Veeck Sr. had the idea that the vines.
It was Junior. It was Bill. It was Bill Veeck. It was Junior, because his dad had already passed.
Okay, so
and it was Phil Wrigley who would.
Well, here's my point though. Phil Wrigley had I think the really great idea at the time, and it sort of goes hand in hand with what Jim just mentioned, and I think what the Ricketts are trying to do. Jim made a statement just a minute ago to the effect to draw the fans into the park, and I think what Phil Wrigley did was sell it as come out and see beautiful Wrigley Field. In other words, even if the team stinks, you want the experience of coming to Wrigley Field, which I think was at that point in time was a great marketing idea. Now, today's day and age, I think Jim is right. You need more than that, and I think the Ricketts, as much as I hate to see the old stadium be changed, and I think it's going to be changed pretty drastically. I think probably that's what they need to do to market their team. And that's
Joe Gentile always said that regardless what the Cubs do, if they win or if they lose, Wrigley Field will always be jam-packed because people come there because they want to see the beauty of Wrigley Field.
I agree with that. A lot of that.
You know where Phil Wrigley got the idea for the Vines. It was a minor league stadium in Indianapolis.
Okay.
And actually, when I was on the road years ago, and I went to a game in Indianapolis, that was the first thing I noticed in that old stadium. That stadium has since been, I believe, torn down and replaced. But they had vines up on the wall, and that's where Phil Wrigley got the idea.
I have to say to both you guys, though, that I really, in my heart, though, I had a friend, I can't remember who it was, it doesn't matter, that said his son or his grandson went to Wrigley Field and had been at the new Comiskey, the U.S. Cellular, and, whoever took him was thrilled. We're going to go to Wrigley Field. And, of course, U.S. Cellular is nice. It's a new stadium. It's a nice place. I've been there once, and it's nice. But the kid's reaction was, well, why do I want to come to this dump, meaning Wrigley Field, as opposed to, going to U.S. Cellular, or they might have been from St. Louis, going to the new
Busch.
park in St. Louis.
Yeah.
And I'm like, you know what? I sort of get really ticked off when I hear that, because Wrigley Field is a gorgeous ballpark. When you sit in the stands, which you're there that's what you're there to do, to watch a ball game. I don't think there's probably a better place other than maybe Fenway Park in the majors anymore. There's a few new stadiums that have been built that are nicer, that are more, in my way of thinking, fan friendly, at least in terms of watching a ball game. But what these kids are looking for, and it just frosts me, but it's typical of today, is they want all of the food vendors and the stores underneath the stadium, and that's what makes the stadium not a dump, as opposed to sitting in the beautiful ballpark. With great sight lines, watching a ball game.
Watching the game, I think the joke initially was when the new Sox Park, people were referring to it as Comiskey Mall.
It is. That was my impression of being underneath. Underneath area.
What I always liked about the Sox Park, I liked the wide concourse.
Mm-hmm.
I like the fact that you while you're on that concourse, certainly downstairs, you can still look out and see what's going on.
Mm-hmm.
You still have that presence of the ball game right there.
Yeah.
But
Jim and John, I know you've both been to Wrigley. I'll never forget the first time, or any time I've been to Wrigley. It doesn't matter if it would have been the first or however many times I go. When you walk up the stairs to get to the field level, to your seats, and you hit that top stair and you see that field, it's an unbelievable feeling. It's a great feeling.
I have a friend of mine who she's the president of a bank in Grand Rapids, Michigan, but grew up downstate. And Lori is a diehard Cub fan.
Mm-hmm.
When I've gone to a game with Lori, the first thing no matter where our seats are, we have to come up at that first entrance in the right field corner.
Mm-hmm.
So we can get to the top and she can see the whole field.
Yeah, that's
And if we're on the lower deck, we just walk all the way along to wherever we happen to be seated.
Yeah. That's that's what I mean. And for people, see, it just burns me up. Maybe it's because I just feel like I'm detached from the younger generation in a sense, but it just burns me up that
we're old. That's the problem.
That to me, when I went to a ballpark, I didn't go for the hot dogs, I didn't go for the bobblehead dolls, I didn't go for the baseball hats or the little bats that they sold or whatever. The best thing for me was the program where I could keep score and keep score with and the game. I mean, the other stuff, if my dad or whoever I went with, or years later when I went with friends or whatever, if you would have told me there's no beer, there's no hot dogs, I don't give a darn. I won't go and see a ball game. see a ball game and enjoy it.
You talking about the scoreboard, the scorecard with the little small pencil?
Right. Right. I would pick up a scorecard outside. My dad early on showed me how to keep score and the basic stuff, and then I would start to get a little fancier and start to note all this stuff, and put the little diamond in and say, okay, he made it here, then advance to here.
Yeah, see, you're a good scorekeeper. I'll tell you, who are great scorekeepers, because I think they have to be, because they have to rely on, well, maybe not with all the technology today, but some guys who are old timers, I think, don't use the technology as much, but is the broadcasters.
Oh yeah, they have their scorebooks.
They keep detailed. They want to remember what happened with this last time this guy was at bat or whatever. So they keep it as very detailed.
And when you get those games where it's a long game, extra innings, or you get the spring training games where there's everybody is
Yeah, they got how many guys play? 30 guys show up in the game.
30, 40 guys get into the game, and you'll hear Pat Hughes go, "Oh my God, I can't read my scorecard." Ronnie, how's yours look?
Yeah.
I can't figure it out either, Pat.
Well, I have to say, with the old scorecards, I mean, okay, it was okay if you got one substitute because you just scratched the guy out and you put the next guy in and say whatever inning he came in, but especially with pitchers back then. But now, like you say, in spring training is a great example. Now you go to 3, maybe 4, sometimes 5 guys coming in the game. There's not that much room on that scorecard. You got to keep crossing guys out. The names get smaller and smaller.
Yeah, what position is he playing? I don't know. We'll see. Where is he batting? We'll wait and see who shows up.
How things have changed.
I know.
Chip, I remember when I was a kid, and if I have mentioned this on the air before, I apologize. I may have, or I might just said it to you guys in private. If you would have told me that there was such a thing as ESPN, I would have been in hog heaven. Today, now that there is such a thing, I'm like, get rid of the sucker. I mean, it's just, to me, it's sickening. You have guys talking to talk and
talk. I had to laugh. I saw a clip the other day of Mike and Mike, and Chris Carter was on with him, and Frank Caliendo called in, and he was calling in, and he was Stephen B. Smith.
Oh, okay.
Not Stephen A. Smith.
Oh, okay.
But he was still the same overblown sentences, the things, and he referred to my close personal friend DeMarco Murray, which close personal friend, that means I've watched him play, but I've never met him actually.
Yeah, there you go. Oh man.
But the Cowboys will win after it.
Unreal. Just a lot of blowhards and you know what I guess I could never make it in this business really, Jim, because I have to tell you, I cannot trash people. I'm not going to say I'm never going to be critical. Sometimes I will be, but I try to keep it to a minimum because it's not as black and white. Some people want to see things black and white, but I don't think it's as black and white as it is. We were talking the other day about. I think I mentioned to you about the papers are always on Jay Cutler about not being a leader.
Right.
Well, how does anybody really know that?
How do you know that?
The man has been a quarterback since where did he grow up? Is it Christmas, Indiana,
Santa
Claus, Indiana? He's been a quarterback. He went to, I got to say this. The man, unless he's your typical dumb jock who doesn't take any classes, he went to Vanderbilt. That's a very good university. Right. So it's not like he's stupid. And he was the quarterback there. He was the quarterback for the Broncos at an early time in his career. He's been the quarterback for the Bears. I have to think that he has some leadership abilities. He may not be your cup of tea. He may not be jumping up and down on his toes like Tom Brady, as you said.
And he comes to the side and makes as they call it, he's our jerk face guy.
Mm-hmm. Really? What were we saying last night, though? If you look at Bill Belichick on the sidelines, you're thinking, this guy's got the deer in the headlights look all the time. He looks like, what's going on here?
And I said Lovie Smith always looked like somebody took the last bit of toilet paper.
Yeah, so I don't know how they can tell about some of this stuff though, and these guys get trashed,
and they get trashed for it, and they get trashed for the stupidest things. I just keep thinking, the one thing I always love when I listen to the Score, when they refer to anything as from ESPN, they always refer to it as the Booyahs. Mm-hmm. The Booyah Boys.
Yeah.
And I always think the classic reaction to somebody of ESPN's overblown coverage was that first year when the Big Three were playing for Miami. Mm-hmm. Down there, we're playing for the Heat. And they sent somebody down there to cover like 24-hour coverage of the Heat training camp. And Charles Barkley got on Philadelphia radio. And they said, "What do you think of it, Charles?" "Oh, my goodness, this is terrible. This is just nothing but pure, unadulterated butt kissing."
Yeah, yeah. Well, I was reading the article on the Bulls the other day, and I think it was Joakim Noah, because I guess he had the surgery on his knee, and I don't know if Thibodeau is just watching his minutes or if he's maybe not ready to go as long as he usually does. But I have a feeling that the Bulls almost collectively have had it with Joe Colley of the Sun-Times, because at the end of the article, and I don't remember Noah's exact comments, but he did say something, and I'm not paraphrasing, I'm not that far off. He goes, you guys just don't get it. And I don't remember what Colley's take on the whole story was, but Noah, and Colley, I guess to his credit, actually had it printed, because the quote was, you guys just don't get it. And I guess it was in reference to his injury or whatever. And, I think that's the way the players rightfully sometimes feel. I think the press would do themselves a favor, instead of being so obsessed now with being news reporters. I have to tell you, going back to the old days when they covered up a lot for the players, a lot of the shenanigans that went on were covered up by the sports writers, because these guys traveled together, they drank together, they ate together, they went to the track together, they were friends in a lot of instances. So a lot of discretions were not reported, they were overlooked. Actually, though, I think with that approach, you might be able to get more nuggets, if that's what you're looking for from the players, than if you're this guy that's just, you're bashing them. Eventually, you're going to hit up against the stone wall, because you know what? When they start reading and not liking what you're printing because you're trying to be Mr. Tell-All, you're not going to get anything from them. And I think that's what's happening.
It really is. And you're going to be shut out, and then you're going to start, the writers themselves, well, yes, then they're going to start taking shots at them. Or you're going to pick up nuggets from somebody else.
Right. You always got front office people blabbing.
And you're not going to quite get the story right.
That's true. Yeah.
Which is the issue I think the Cubs are having with Gordon
Madden,
with Gordon Whitmire.
Oh, yeah, that's right. He was. You were saying that he got a little testy with Epstein at the was it the last press conference after the season?
Yeah.
Or the day after the season, or whatever it was.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like, well, and it. Everybody has always been very clear with the Cubs. They've been very transparent the whole time as to what they're going to do. There have been no secrets.
Right. Yeah, that's true. You realize that let's see, when you get the self-help gurus and the sports writers who think they're coaches and the commentators who think that they're running things in the government. I mean, if all put it this way, I would say this: if there was actually some type of formula that everybody could use, we'd all be in heaven, because everybody would be using it, and we'd all be millionaires, and then it wouldn't matter anyway, because we'd all have the same amount of money, and the money wouldn't mean anything. But I guess my point is, if there was some secret formula that every coach, because we're talking sports, could use to make his team successful, don't you think that they would use it? There is no certain one secret formula. I mean, you have God knows how many different teams on how many different levels, and different personnel on all of them, and different coaches and different personalities. It's mind-boggling. The combinations are probably endless. Yeah. So how is there one formula? There is no one formula.
Now you've got one thing here in the season preview from this is today's Sun-Times. Cowley. 1 point. Number 4, coach's coach. The Thibodeau versus the front office storyline has been relatively quiet, and both sides would like it to stay that way. That requires the front office letting Thibodeau do what he does best and allowing him to pace the team as he sees fit without distraction. If not, go ahead and look for a trading partner for Thibodeau now and call Fred Hoiberg for the vacancy.
What? What was that? I don't even understand what you just read. In other words, he's saying that
he says, let Thibodeau do what he does. Don't second-guess him.
Why? Is he being second-guessed?
You know, there's always been the question that Thibodeau plays his starters too much, burns them out, and that's why they've failed in the postseason.
Well, I think that's a legitimate question that anybody could ask, but I would also say this. Thibodeau, I would say, is probably a reasonable man. He wouldn't be in the position he is if he wasn't reasonable. I think any head coach or manager is a pretty reasonable person, but you're going to do what you think you need to do to be successful, and you have to continue to do that on a game-by-game basis. We can't just skip over the season and go to the postseason in the Bulls' case. We got to win the games to get to the postseason, and if he thinks that playing his starters major minutes, because those are the guys that he are doing the things he wants done better than the other guys, then that, in his opinion, that's what he's got to do. Now, you can question it. Sometimes I question it. But I think when I get down to it, I'm thinking Tom Thibodeau is doing this because he thinks that's what he needs to do to get to the point of being in the playoffs. And I don't know. I can't question that. You got to get there first. So, Jim.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know what else you can do. I think probably the first thing that everyone looked at was when Rose hurt his knee the first time.
Mm-hmm.
In a game that he really shouldn't, in a time in a game that he really didn't need to be in.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And that was the question. Well, what is he doing out there?
Yeah. Yeah, I suppose you could add, you know what, I don't know. Did anybody ask Thibodeau? What was his answer? I mean, because I'm sure he had an answer. I mean, he's not just leaving him out there
He's
for no
not just
reason.
leaving him out there just for the sake of leaving him out there.
Here's, Jim, I'm as we're talking about this, I'm thinking one of the things I hate about, and I'm going to use Major League Baseball, you'll see the managers all do this. They have a regular player. They play him 4 or 5 games in a row. He could be hot. He could be cold. But then he's automatically got to sit for a bench guy because they got to get that bench guy some innings and some swings.
Mm-hmm.
And, there's a part of that that's, to me, that says, yeah, that makes sense. But at the same time, I'm saying, well, your job is to win games. I've seen teams put lineups out there that I'm thinking, and anything can happen, don't get me wrong, but for a one-game basis, I see him put a lineup out there, and I'm thinking, where are we going to get the runs from? How are we going to win this game? Mm-hmm. And I think your job is to go out there and try to win the game every day. And I'm not saying it's easy because you got to balance that with it's a long season, and you got to keep everybody sharp, and you got to look towards the end and make sure that everybody can be there at the end as much as possible. But this is not like it's an easy thing to do. If I sit there and I think to myself, if I was in Thibodeau's situation or a manager of a Major League Ball club, how would I do this? I could criticize it in one instance, but maybe I'd be doing the same thing. Mm-hmm. So it's very, the criticism. What I don't like about it is I oftentimes think it's knee-jerk, and I don't know how well thought out it is.
Yeah. And the one thing, just going back to the Bulls this year, a lot of the comments is the bench mob this year has the potential to be as good as the bench mob from a couple of years ago.
I think it does.
The reserves are saying, well, we're beating the starters every day in practice.
I believe that. That could happen. I have to say, too, though, the little bit I've read, they played 8 exhibition games. This is the Bulls. and the two rookies, McDermott and I don't know how you say his name. Is it Mirotic or Mirotic? Mirotic.
I think I've heard it both ways, but I think Mirotic is correct.
You know, they've had up and down types of preseasons. I wouldn't take much stock in that. Because you know what, they're getting their feet wet. I'm sure that one of the things I'd like to know, say, if McDermott or Mirotic doesn't have a good scoring game, because they're going to be guys who are counted on for offense. Who are they out there with? Who are they out there with? And at the same time, who are they against? I don't think you could just say Doug McDermott only scored 3 points in this exhibition game, so you know he's looking a little iffy. That stat there doesn't mean a thing to me.
That doesn't do anything. It's gonna you're going to be looking for your matchups.
Mm-hmm.
You're going to be looking for the situations where he's going to be effective against him.
Right.
You know.
Yeah.
So and so's got McDermott's. McDermott. I need to put McDermott in because so and so's going to be in there because last time he did well.
Jim, you just said a mouthful there because when you think about it, you know, there's no question that both of these guys can score. But the matchups, as you say, are going to be key. I mean, Ron Kalina, who was our old coach from at Ridgewood, used to say, "I have to put my players in the best position for them to succeed."
Right.
That's
that's
what you got to do.
And that's and isn't that coaching?
That's coaching.
You know, you got to put them in the best position possible.
Mm-hmm.
Well, once again, there's still stuff in the bag that we haven't gotten to.
No, that's for sure.
We still got.
Who's that lefty on the cover there? Is that Carlos Rodon?
Peavy would love to partner with his pal Lester and sign with the Cubs in free agency.
I would love to see a guy like Jake Peavy come
I think that would be good. That would be fun. But that's going to be something we're going to talk about.
Actually, I just thought that was a picture of Carlos Rodon that they were taking for his bust at the Hall of Fame.
They're giving him a shot right next to Chris Bryant. They're both getting their Hall of Fame.
They're both going in at the same time.
They're both getting their Hall of Fame plaques.
How
ready.
Appropriate.
That's it. All right, time for us to get out of here. Thanks for listening. Thanks for picking us up on the internet, listening on the radio, wherever we're.
John, we love you, buddy.
Yeah, John, thanks again, pal. We love you, man. We'll see you in a couple of weeks. Thanks for listening. We're out of here.
You have been listening to Armchair Experts from the John DeVita Broadcast Center on Wednesday, October the 30th on Jack-O-Lantern FM 89.7, WRHS FM Norwich, and the Windy City Hometown Entertainment Network with the WRHS sports announcers Jim Leon and Rich Massaro. This broadcast was directed by John DeVita. Audio engineer was James Rohde. Radio station manager is Kevin Zeflick. And the executive producer of Windy City Hometown Entertainment Network is Mr. John Seconda. This broadcast was pre-recorded on Tuesday, October the 29th. Until next time, please be safe and thanks for listening. And this is Jack FM 89.7 WRHS FM Norwich, a Ridgewood Community High School radio station.